for this challenge we're revisiting an old favourite. So we've got the prep school children and when their birthdays are as our input. Now I've already gone and removed a few fields from our input step, so when you read this data set in, it's on this kind of data preview. I find it easier if I'm going to remove a lot of fields to go to the field list instead, so to just click that button up here. And so I only really need the ID of the student and their date of birth in order to work out their birthdays and to kind of keep some kind of uniqueness about each row. So then that brings me a data set that looks like this. So we need to work out when their birthday is going to be for the 2024 to 2025 term. So basically if they're born from September to December, then their birthday will be in 2024. And if they're born January to August, their birthday will be in 2025. So we need to update this date of birth field to reflect that. And I found that easiest to do using a calculated field. It's a fairly long calculation that I've written. I tried to make it nice and indented, nice and formatted. So we're saying if that month of the date of birth is greater than or equal to 9, so basically if it's 9, 10, 11 or 12, so September to December, then we're going to make a date from it in 2024, taking the month of the date of birth and the day of the date of birth. Otherwise, we just have this exact same calculation, but with 2025 instead of 2024. Lovely. So that gives us our date, our birthday that we are working with. And then we don't need the date of birth anymore because we now have that current date that we're looking at. We also want to know what days these birthdays fall on, so we just duplicate this birthday field, like so. So you would right click on that field, go down to the duplicate field option there and duplicate it, and then we can convert the dates there to the day of the week so that we get out the weekday name, and just rename that to be birthday day. So we can deal with the people who are born on Saturdays or Sundays and roll them back to the previous Friday with a quick calculation. So if we come to this step here, then we see that we're adding in a calculated field, and we're saying, I maybe overcomplicated this calculation myself. I've got a nested if statement here, but I'm saying if the birthday day starts with an S, then if the birthday day is Saturday, we need to minus 1 day, basically, using the date add function. Otherwise, we're minusing 2 days. Could I have written this as one if, where I said if the birthday day equals Saturday, then do this part, else if the birthday day equals Sunday, do this part, else birthday? Absolutely. It's just that when I was thinking it through, I was wondering if I could do anything a bit dynamic with just having one kind of if statement clause, but I struggled to do that. So in trying to simplify, I may have overcomplicated slightly there. Cool. So then we're looking, so we've solved for all those children who have the birthdays on the weekends, but rolling it back to that Friday still might not solve it for everyone because we've got to think about when the holidays are for the school children. So we bring in this second data set that has all of the holidays listed down here. So we can see the start date and the end date are currently strings, so let's just quickly convert those. So go to the data type here, change it from a string to a date. For both the starts and the ends field. And then we're wanting to identify out of these terms which ones are holidays and which ones are terms. I thought we could just identify them based on the word term, but you can see that there are half-term holidays as well, which is a pain. So I identify which ones are terms based on the word term and then a space. Not maybe the cleanest way of doing it. You could use some regex to check if there were numeric values in the row, and that would identify a term. Lots of different ways to do it. That's just the way that I chose to do it. So I just did a simple calculation to say contains that term field the word term and then a space. So I'll just zoom in there on that. And that gives us back a true false, which I then changed into a whole number so that we get a 1 and a 0 instead. The reason that I did this was in order to give us some kind of way of numbering them. So basically, what we're going to do is a running total. So if you take a look down at the bottom here at our term field, then we have basically in the order that this data set came in is the order that it goes in. So our first row is the first part of the autumn term, then we get to the autumn half term. So these two are kind of grouped together is what we want to do, because any dates that fall within here we basically want to have as the last day of term. So we want some way to group these together so that we know to take this end day as the final cake day of that segment of the term. So if we added these two numbers together, we'd have 1 there, so that would group them together. And then we get to this next row, a new kind of term grouping would start. This would become a 2 if we're doing that running total there. So let's just go ahead and do that running total based on that field. So it's as simple as going to that term question mark field, doing a running total, so a sum running calculation, ordering by the row source number, and then you see that we get this back. So for example, where we had our 1, 1 for that first section, then 2, 2, and then you can see when it gets to 4, for example, we get spring term 4, then we have not only the term but also the Easter holiday and the Easter bank holiday weekend as well. I'm just realising that you could probably have done that much more simply by extracting the numbers here and then using the fill down option to get to the same result. But the way my brain worked in was doing a running total, but equally absolutely fine to do that as well. And then, like I said, for these groupings that we have at the term order, we now want to apply the last Friday as the end date of the term that comes before the holiday. So the way that we're going to identify that is we're going to create a quick field called end of term day. So if the term equals 1, so if it is a term, then give us the ends date. So all those others are null there. And then we could do a fill down at this point, but I've chosen to do a fixed LOD calculation to just take the minimum grouping by the term order there. So lots of different ways to achieve this data structure, but that's the way that I've gone about it. Removed a couple of fields that we were using as stepping stones to get to this point, and then we should have a data set that looks like this. Then we want to join our two data sets together. So the cake day needs to come after the start and before the end of those segments, so that like putting each of those cake day dates into whatever term they fall in or whatever holiday they fall in. We do lose our 1st of September birthdays here, but they would have been dealt with in the previous year, so that's fine to ignore them. So now we just need to focus on moving all those ones that fall in the holidays to the last Friday of the term that precedes them. So there we go. So if the term equals 1, so if it is during term time, then just leave the cake day as it is. Otherwise, take that last Friday field that we created just before the join. And then we're just going through the steps of aggregating, so grouping by the cake day, counting the distinct IDs for that cake day. Similar process to before, where we duplicate the cake day field and convert it into a cake weekday, and then we're ready to output the data. And the challenge is done. So thanks very much to Carl for this challenge, and thanks very much for watching.